Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. This is J2D here, and today we're going to be reacting to men's rights versus feminists. This is part of a series going on. It's called Middle Ground. You can find it at the Jubilee channel. I kind of been on a binge watch with the Middle Grounds. They have a lot of good episodes. So basically what it is that they have two teams from opposing views, such as men's rights versus feminists or Crips versus Bloods, etc. And they have them talk about stuff and kind of meet with situations to ask questions to kind of open up the debate. For the most part, it's usually cordial, but then, sometimes you just get some really good fucking memes and really good shit. So today, we're going to react to this. So let's get right in this. And on the men's rights corners, we have Zach, Kursak, and Derek, the self-proclaimed incel. Yes, this is the meme lord. If you haven't seen anything about this episode, this man is the highlight of this episode. Oh yeah, and did I mention he is a... And on the feminist side, we have Alicia, Bea, and Mimi. Now, this is the thing that I don't understand. On the men's side, we have a college kid with a fucking accent, and a self-proclaimed incel. But on everybody on the women's side has a profession, a respectable profession at that. So they are making money. I don't feel like it's really equal, because feminism is also supposed to be to make women and men equal. They couldn't make this panel a little equal. But I guess there's not a lot of professionals that are in the field where they are technically men rights activists. I don't know. I guess Jubilee was just not trying to look. And one more thing I want to bring up as well. Alicia is a fine name, but Bea and Mimi, or Bea and Mimi, like, how fucking old are y'all? Aren't y'all like in y'all late 20s? Why the fuck are y'all going with names of B or Bea or Bena or whatever the fuck she wants to call herself, because she never says her fucking name through the goddamn episode? Or fucking Mimi, like as if her name was Mia and she was like, I don't want to be called Mia, let me call Mimi. Like, what in the fuck is this bullshit? Like, y'all are grown people, and like, y'all can't just use your real name unless your parents just fucked up and just really called you Bea or Bea or whatever the fuck and Mimi. But I digress.
If this statement is true for you, I believe men and women are different but equal.
So they just gave the first question. I just want to give a little bit of my input before they sit down and start talking. So as far as the statement goes, I think it's a true statement, and I would probably sit my ass down as well, because I think men and women are equal but different. So for example, when you talk about things that are balanced, right? Like if you have 1,000 pounds of rocks and 1,000 pounds of feathers, they're balanced. They're technically equal in weight, but they're two different things. So that's how I think that men and women fit in this sphere of life that we call it, right? Men are physically stronger, women can bear kids, men can be good at one thing, women can be good at another. There's a lot of things that men and women can be good at or are naturally born good with. And, I think those negatives and positives from both sexes make it so you are equal, or at least that you have it, that it is equal. As far as it goes, I don't think men are smarter than women or women are smarter than men. I think when it comes to intelligence, men and women can be as smart as anything. Of course, the difference of how maybe they say that women are driven by emotion and men are driven more by logic, but I've seen very emotional men and very logical women in my time, right? But at the end of the day, I do think that it's equal. But let's get back to this and let's see what they got to say.
I know as a woman that I don't have the same physical strengths. Men and women are built differently. I think whenever things are built differently, it's for a reason, right? But at the same time, the amount of limits that have been put on women historically, like the fact that not too long ago we were just allowed to start voting. Even today, like the wage gap, just all types of stuff. Like women just don't have a lot of rights that are just, it should have nothing to do with what gender we are to be able to be paid equally or just be treated with respect. So.
I'm gonna have to stop you right there. The whole wage gap argument, it's such a faulty argument. If you actually look at the study is just comparing how much money on average men and women make. They don't add maternity leave, which a lot of women do take off when they do have babies, and sometimes it's half the pay they would usually get. So we'll bring that average down. They're not saying if someone has a bachelor's, a master's, or anything like that. They're not saying all the different positions in a job. So for example, let's say you work at McDonald's, right? You just say you work at McDonald's. That's a whole plethora of things that you have to go through, because there's a difference between the cashier, the manager, the district manager, the regional manager, people who work in corporate, right? People who work in advertising. They all work under the banner of McDonald's, but they don't all have the same thing. So that's like doing that and trying to compare the averages of everyone there. And let's just say for the majority of people in corporate are women and the majority of people in the grunt area are men, right? It would show that women make more money than men. But again, we're just saying in McDonald's, women make more money than men. But we're not actually looking at the study. The study will show, well, these people get paid this for this position, and then these people get paid this because they're in a higher position, right? So position really does matter, especially if we're doing something that is comparing men and women, right? So I just had to add that little info right here, but let's continue on with the video.
Yeah.
I do believe that, of course, there are biological differences between men and women. And, of course, there should also be legal equality. Of course, I disagree with the idea that women face systemic discrimination. You just mentioned the wage gap, which has been debunked so many times.
I've studied evolutionary biology quite a bit. And men and women are very different from not just a physical, the bone structure, the neural.
Yo, look at her face. She is not messing with any of these ideas at all. She just looks like she just wants to say something. She just cannot hold it in. She looks like she's about to start bitching at any moment now.
I would also like to elaborate. I am not saying that they are worse overall or better overall.
They complement
like
each other.
Like he said, they do.
They complement each other beautifully.
They work very well together.
We
when
need
they
each other
are
for
working in that proper,
offspring. I mean, that's part of the beauty of it, and I think trying to equalize them and make them the same and transition and all that, I don't believe is going to be the most conducive when it comes to raising children, but also just for overall well-being.
I want to note that you brought up children being unequal to adults. I just hope you weren't comparing women to children.
I mean, it was technically a comparison of women and children.
I don't need you to protect me. I just need you not to harm me.
Woo! Self-proclaimed incel boy really got her triggered on that one. It's like, how dare you compare me to kids? But just like kids, women are a protected class here, and it is seen. Like, if, for example, a man hits a woman, he's in deep doo-doo. But if a woman hits a man, is empowering, there's nothing to really combat that, And, if we look at a lot of things, too, like marriages, right? It's like marriage, women usually win because they're seen as the weaker party, right? Back in the day, or back then, when they didn't have this, or they didn't at least see whoever's the weaker party benefits from this, men technically were tyrants then, right? Because men could be basically the biggest piece of shit. They could be the cheaters. They could be the abusers. Because at the end of the day, they had all the power because there was never this, oh, if you divorce me, you're going to get half my stuff. So they used to be like, hey, well, I could do anything the fuck I want because if you leave with nothing. So you got to stay with me or you're screwed, right? Or if the man ever decides to divorce her, like she would get the short end of the stick. So, laws made it to help and protect women, to try to make things equal. But if we're talking about marriage, the swing to the other side was a little too much because, like, men are usually hands down. Like, women can lie about a lot of things and it won't be the same for men, especially if we're talking about rape. Like, if a woman lies about a man raping her, it's kind of a done deal for that guy. And most people would come to her defense, for the most part, unless it's somebody really big. But, like, no one ever really takes a man being serious when he said he got raped, right? But which is sad because every instance should be taken with seriousness, right? Like, rape is a serious charge, but of course men would get laughed out the building if they were ever to go and be like, hey, I got raped, right? And pedophilia is just a whole nother thing as well, but I'm not really going to get into that. But at the end of the day, women do have certain privileges that men do not have in the law system, and that's because men always said and look at themselves as the more physically stronger or just stronger sex. So they're like, we have to do things to protect women, right? And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, right? And that's why I'm saying, like, feminists don't really even agree with each other on this, because you have some that's like, I want to keep the benefits and have more, and then you have some like this who act like that, oh no, I'll defend myself if anything, right? And it's just like, do you do you really have that energy? I doubt it, to be honest, because I'm pretty sure she'll be the first one to pull the V card if, you know, she was ended up with a fight with a man. But I also kind of fit into that demographic where it's just like, yeah, I don't think men should hit women. I don't think, you know, women should be taking care of a man financially or anything like that, right? And that's just the causality of like how we live in society, right? But, you know, it is what it is on that point, but let's continue on.
Toxic masculinity is real.
I think that toxic masculinity is definitely a real thing. It's kind of just the idea of what masculinity should be, but it goes wrong a lot of the times, saying that violence, sex, power, being a controlling person makes you a man.
I see it in very unfortunate places, like when the young men or boys in my family, even from like toddler age, are told, you shouldn't be crying, boys don't cry. And what that turns into, I see it when I'm in a bookstore and a guy who tries to get my number says, why y'all always gotta act like that? And he sincerely had this like cracking voice, like he was hurt, but it was an entitlement.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God.
Why the fuck are you lying? Talking about, oh, he came up and his voice cracked when I denied him. First of all, if a man comes up to you and is just asking for your number or whatever the case may be, you know, he's just asking for your number, I'm pretty sure he's not over here crying because you said no. If anything, he's probably like, fuck you, bitch. In all honesty, right? In all honesty. But the second thing too, right? They're talking about toxic masculinity. You see, if men didn't go up to women, women definitely not going up to men, right? Because they're also taught that they're not supposed to do anything, right? Because this whole conversation is about toxic masculinity or whatever the hell they want to say it is, right? But all these quote-unquote toxic traits is kind of what helps society as well, right? To be courageous, to be initiative, to go first, to act out, to do this, to make the money, to be the breadwinner. Like, these are qualities. You know, there are good things about being masculine. I was saying toxic masculinity is just bad, and, you know, every man has it, and it's just the way they act, like they are entitled. Well, women are entitled too, right? And I have no problem with entitlement, right? Because I think men and women should be entitled, right? You shouldn't go with some fat slob dude with a little dick because society tells you to. You could be a sizes or fucking whatever you want when it comes to that, because that's your own happiness, right? If you're just like, I want a guy with money. And guess what? Men will get mad because there's men that don't have money that would like to date you or whatever the case may be. Same thing with men. If men are like, hey, I want a woman to do this, I want a woman to be like this, I want a woman to that, they have every right. Now, if you want to say, oh, well, they have toxic traits or whatever the case may be, well, so do women. At the end of the day, women do have toxic traits, and that can all be put. But the last time I checked, as I said, like there's these checks and balances that we have, right? And to say toxic masculinity is the problem but not toxic femininity, I think that is just disingenuous.
I think that, you know, when you're showing your emotions, especially to, like, you know, random people, random women in some cases, they will view you as weak. I was raised by a single mother. I love her. She's my mom. I love her. But I could have used being told to act like a man. I think back, there were some cases where I was too emotional, and that negatively affected how I, what happened to me. And,
may I ask a question?
Sure.
What is your definition of weak as a man?
Not being as forward as you could be, not being as honest, or, you know, trying to be not as emotional as you don't need to be. You know, you don't have to cry over a cut. I know, you know, sometimes cuts hurt a lot, but sometimes it's necessary to be strong for the benefit of not just yourself, but for the people around you, you know.
Well, this is where I'm going to have to disagree with Mr. Incel man over here. You know, the perfect representation of men, of course. See, and I disagree with somebody from the men's side. So you see, I'm not a sexist, women. See, don't hate at me. But anyways, you know, at the end of the day, emotions are very important, and it's important to keep them in tune, right? And know how you're feeling and when you're feeling and stuff like that, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're not able to recognize your emotions, you could legit become a fucking psychopath. you know, like not knowing anything, you could start to project. You can start to be a very unlikable person. But if you're overly emotional, people just don't want to be around you. So it's a double-edged sword, right? Like everything needs perfect balance in the world. Well, not perfect, but at least somewhat balanced. And it's like you have to fit that middle ground, right? And I think you should be taught emotions are okay, but you should also be taught that sometimes you have to, you know, weed them out and actually know when to be emotional. Because he's like, oh, go to a random person to be emotional, and it's just like no one is saying that. But like, if you're in a long-term relationship or a relationship with your friends or something, you should be able to tell, you know, your friend or your partner how you're feeling and describe how you're feeling, you know, and not just be this jumble mess or not say anything. Because guess what? When you don't say anything, you build resentment for people. And when you build resentment for people, that can just make everything just bad. So, you know, I just have to disagree with him there. And, you know, hopefully Mr. Incel man, you know, the perfect representation of man, can get a little bit better.
It's fine to act emotional in certain cases, but I don't think it's fine to act that way with a woman. Maybe, you know, you have a really good friend and he sees you cry, like, you know, he's your best friend and you're crying about something really personal. I think that's fine.
I feel like you're conflating two different situations because you started off with saying a random person or even women. So it feels like, okay, this is a woman that you don't have a bond with or any type of relationship with. And then you mentioned, or in front of your best friend. You know, that's okay to cry. Well, that woman could be your best friend.
This man legit just fucking laughed in this woman's face and was like, oh, nah, women can't be your friend. Like, God, oof. Yeah, nah, this man is a pariah. Holy shit. But nah, all jokes aside, like, no, women can be friends. You can be friends with women. In high school, I used to be friends with women who like video games and stuff like that, and I wasn't necessarily sexually attracted to them. You know, it is what it is. Like, I do think it may be a little bit harder if you are sexually attracted to a woman and then to be their friend. But I also have a girlfriend that I consider to be my best friend as well, too. Like, I confide everything to her, right? And I have my boys that I confide a lot of things to, and I will even go as far as to say everything too. But I can't really sense this man really even talks to a lot of women. Women probably don't even look in his direction. And it's sad, you know, but you or he has to see that he just doesn't have qualities that women would like, right? But again, he's a incel, right? Self-identified incel, right? So it is what it is on that point. But let's continue.
Today, women have more advantages than men.
I can speak from a hiring standpoint when it comes to things like affirmative action, and there are certain roles that traditionally men and women have been able to serve in, and now women can basically do all of those things, right? Because we've had such a strong advocacy for equal representation in the workplace. Whereas, for example, you know, you'll never find a man as a midwife nurse, and I don't think it's appropriate. That's why there are those differences.
Women in like the most important parts of society have an advantage. There's a lot of positions that men simply aren't getting hired at anymore because of, you know, the fact that they're a man.
As far as this statement, I guess I kind of already touched on it a little bit earlier in the video, but I think that men and women in society do have privileges. Like, there are certain privileges men have, there are certain privileges women have, right? Both law, societal, so on and so forth. I guess maybe an example for men is like, hey, like a man could go sleep with whoever he wants. He's not seen as dirty. He's not seen as a whore. A woman does it, it's done. But as I was saying earlier with marriage, when it's divorce, women are usually seen as the weaker party majority of the time. And even if a man like tries to argue his heart out, he can still lose everything. And there's a good chance that he'd lose everything. But these things balance. As I said, it's the rock to feathers, you know, conversation that we was talking about, that even though they're two different things, they weigh the same and they balance, right? And they have their own properties that make them that weight, right? It might be lesser rocks to make 1,000 pounds, but it's still 1,000 pounds. Same thing with the feathers. It might take more feathers to make 1,000, but it's still 1,000 pounds of feathers. So at the scheme of things, you know, I don't think that women have more advantages than men, right? You know, he is talking about, you know, they kind of gets into it a little bit. He does talk about like, oh, like in hiring place, affirmative action, stuff like that. But affirmative action honestly does work more on a race basis. Like, it does work on a sex basis, but it's more on race, if anything else, if you was to bring that up. But at the end of the day, I'm not really a fan of quotas. Like, if you're fit for the job, you're fit for the job. And sometimes some people are just gonna luck out in that way. And I understand people say, like, history and stuff like that it equates to that, but I don't think any woman is inferior to a man intelligently, and I don't think any man is inferior to a woman intelligently. So whoever has the harder drive, whoever's the smartest, I think can get ahead. And it is what it is. Sometimes women get hired for their looks. Sometimes women get hired for other reasons. Sometimes men get hired because of who they know or because they're buddy with somebody. Again, it's these give and takes that you have to really see and be honest about. And we're really gonna have this honest conversation. But like, I know simp boy over here, not simp boy, I'm sorry, incel boy over here is probably gonna disagree or not. I don't fucking know. Let's see.
And it's not just in the workforce, it's also, I would say, it's a lot easier for a woman to find a relationship, even if she, says finding the right guy is so hard. It really isn't. But sometimes for a lot of guys, finding a girl at all is hard.
If I have to consider what I wear before stepping out the house, because I don't want to draw some type of attention, I don't know how many other men have to consider, is this outfit going to be deemed safe for me? Any situation that I've experienced where I physically felt endangered simply because I don't want to give my number out. It's part of that entitlement for men. You're not entitled a conversation with me. You're not entitled to my number.
That aside, it's like, are you gonna make one example of the entitlement of men when it comes to asking for your number be the all-encompassing thing that all men have a problem when it comes to approaching women?
Well, firstly, it's not just an example. It's not necessarily all men. I don't dislike men. I love sports, I play video games. I have bros, I hang out with dudes. I have bros, I hang out with dudes. I have bros, I hang out with dudes. I have bros, I hang out with I have bros, I hang out with dudes.
Shut the fuck up!
We just want men to realize that if you have friends that are having locker room talk, as a man, as an ally, please say something to your friends.
Wait, what? No. You don't dictate what men do with their friends, and we don't dictate what women do with their friends. Don't say, when you're having locker room talk, you have no authority to tell anybody or anyone what to do. Fuck out of here. Bae, Bean, Ban, Boo, whatever the fuck your name is. Get the fuck out of here. You're a grown woman trying to tell other grown men what to fucking do with their talk time. If they want to say, women are hot, or I think this woman has big titties, or whatever the fuck he wants to say, you have no right to speak. Who the fuck are you to tell other people, join in? You know what that leads to? You getting exiled, for you not to have any friends. Because if somebody's there dictating what you say 24/7 to make sure you don't hurt anybody's feelings, nobody's going to want to hang out with you. Nobody's going to want to talk to you. And that's a fact. So at the end of the day, you are a grown woman. You talk your shit with your girlfriends or your girls or your bros or whatever you want to say with your cringy ass statement. And you let guys talk about whatever they want to talk about. You have no right to dictate anything that anybody says. Just utter and complete nonsense. I don't even... Woo. Man, I wish I was in this panel. She would have gotten destroyed. But, it was, man.
Attempt at erasure. That's not what feminism is about at all. What do you need a whole men's rights activism movement for? I'm sincerely confused.
Well, I mean, I will advocate for positive masculinity and what men should represent and healthy outlets for men. I still think the Boy Scouts should be exclusively the Boy Scouts, for example, one of those things. Where I would like to think that we could get some common ground is when it comes to the clear biases that are in the court system, especially in the marriage and family court system, right? And right there is what I would advocate for when it comes to men's rights.
The things that stand valid, that I'm hearing from y'all that are valid to me, come from a place of I am treated unfairly by the system. Versus a lot of the things women are saying, it's also America in the system as well, but a lot of it is harm from men.
How and where?
How and where what?
Where's this harm from men coming from?
Okay, it started when I was young. I'm not gonna talk too long. I was 16, got a bottle thrown at me because I told a boy no. It started when I was in a club, a boy touched me, I said no, he kept touching me, it got to the point he got violent. It gets to the point that the only reason why a man decided to stop touching me in the bookstore I talked about earlier is because he realized my husband was not too far away, and he said, sorry bro, never said sorry to me. That's why, and that's off the top of my head. This is why I get upset, because I'm like, I'm here to talk about like how you feel, but when you just dismiss the fact that women actually have experiences, that's when it seems like it's about more than your rights. It seems like it's about your ego. And that's where I get pissed off, because how dare you tell another human being that their experiences, what they're telling you right in front of your face, is not valid.
Yeah, okay, like, I'm sorry, that's not everybody's experiences. Your own experiences do not dictate how every man acts. Like, I'm sorry, like, there are stereotypes, there are a lot of things that go on women and men, and I would disagree if somebody's just like, my own personal experience is the basis of how men act. Sorry, no, that's not the case. You're like, oh, you got a bottle thrown at you, and oh, like, the guy didn't even say sorry to you, he said sorry to the other guy, whatever the case may be. What does that have to do with men as a whole that do something, or something that dictates law, what men do? Like, there are certain things that a lot of men can have in common, a majority, but these whole absolutes, like all women or all men, it's just so ridiculous. And then, you know, she's getting her feelings saying like, my personal experience. It's just like, but nobody really asks for your personal experience. Nobody really asks. They're asking as a whole collective, right? And you're giving your personal experience, and your personal experience is supposed to say what? Because I'm sorry, like, usually at least one person fits that in the dialect, right? Like, it's like, oh, let's say one of the guys did it, that's 1/3. That at least equates to 33%, right? Because like, oh, 1 out of every 3 men, even though that's a horrible statistic, at least you'll have something. But this is nothing. This is absolute nothing. You're just getting triggered just to be triggered. Like, calm the fuck down. Like, you know, it's the same thing. It's just like, I'm sorry that these things happen to you, but this doesn't really add to the conversation. It just shows, oh, you're triggered because men did something bad to you in the past. Like, I'm sorry, it's invalid if like one of them just said, oh, women did something bad to me in the past. It's like, okay, as a collective, how does that describe women? Because one, you're describing what, 2 situations? How many times you had interaction with men? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're saying once you was 16 and once when your husband was in the store. That is 2 times in your life when you probably had millions of interaction with men. So stop the bull, calm down.
System and gender roles are a subject of patriarchy, and that's part of what women are trying to dismantle, is those traditional gender roles.
Are there any feminist organizations that have done anything, for example, to challenge bias against men and fathers in the family court system?
Absolutely.
Can you please give me like a list of feminist advocacy organizations that have engaged in any meaningful advocacy to address those issues? Because there are actually none.
Okay. I know that you came with your little research or whatever. I didn't come with a list of like feminist organizations, but I know actively that there are women's organizations that are trying to dismantle those inequalities.
Just one name, just one
Again, I
organization.
didn't come with a list, my dude.
There are no such organizations.
Oh my god, this man just destroyed her. How you don't know one organization that actually is doing what he's asking? Just one organization. You're talking about, oh, I know you did your little research or something, so you came unprepared? You came to a panel where you are discussing supposed facts, and you have none. You don't have anything that you can rely on. You have nothing, right? You have absolutely nothing, and then you're gonna fucking patronize, somebody else because they actually do know what they're talking about? You're ridiculous, me. Again, 24 years old, still going by fucking Mimi? For strangers to call you Mimi? Like, I don't know. I don't think your head is in the right place when it comes to that. But just still going on there, right? It's a valid criticism. It is a valid criticism towards what you are saying. And then you just say yes. The problem is you don't even say, I don't know. Because if I'm just like, I don't know, then he's just like, you know what? There's none, you know, but I think you need to do research. Or if at least you say, I don't know, at least you gotta have some type of conveyance that you're telling the truth, that you just like, I think there is, but I don't know. But if you're saying yes and then you can't name one, it's like, why are you saying yes then? That is so bad. It looks so bad on you. And then to also, as I said, to get at him for actually knowing what the hell he's talking about, you just look so dumb, girl.
We all believe different things. We may be under the label of men's rights activists, but for example, I'm probably the most traditionalist person here. I think we should be allies, but maybe us being allies in a patriarchy wouldn't be so bad. You know, us going back to the past wouldn't be so bad. It would probably be a lot happier if we were, you know, getting married and staying married and having kids and, you know, going to church and all that, la-di-da-di-da.
Yeah, this is where my man loses me 100%. Talking about let's go back in the past and go where it was, you know, the patriarchy was well and strong or whatever. No, and I just don't know who is he speaking of about being happy. Like, who's gonna be the one that's happy? Men? Women? Kids? The dogs? The fucking mailman? Who's the one that's happier with the, you know, the nuclear family, I guess he's trying to say? I just think that that's just incorrect, because men were still very stressed out. Men became alcoholics, especially when they were the only ones being the breadwinners, right? I don't have a problem with the man being the breadwinner, but I also don't have a problem with if a woman wants to go and have a career for herself, right? Like, yeah, I would say there's a little petty part of me that's like, yeah, the man should still make a little bit more than the woman. The man should work a little bit harder. But if the man and woman is working, and let's just say the woman makes maybe $1,000 more, all right, cool, whatever, right? At least y'all both been doing something, you know? And I know there's a lot of traditionalists that's probably like, oh, I like my woman staying at home and all that. But it's like, you know, have you ever spent a long period of time not doing nothing at home? It's really fucking boring. Oh, wait, we had the coof happen, right? And a lot of people were at home, whether you went to college, work, or anything. A lot of things were put on the back burner, and it's just like, imagine that for like a majority of your life. I'm not saying they didn't have good times, but it's like they didn't, you know, they had to sit at home, and it's just so boring, you know? Being at home is so boring. So I don't blame women if they're like, hey, I want to go to work, right? But to say like people were just happier, that's a disagreement. And, you know, a lot of people be like, oh, marriage was up and marriage is going down and all that. Yeah, more people were religious back then, so they thought they had to get married. But there's probably a lot of people that were hating their marriages, both men and women. So this man loses me. I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Again, I don't know what to expect really from an incel. But, you know, it is what it is.
While speaking to the three of you, I feel like you're each coming from different perspectives. So it's hard to, you know, again, just like our perspectives, it's hard to generalize. So to me, I feel like there are certain things that, even though we're not fully agreeing on it, things may get lost in translation, our verbiage may not be 100% correct, that we could at least agree on.
Can I ask one question? What would you envision would be the ideal man with the end goal of feminism as far as educating men or working to dismantle whatever patriarchy is? Like, what does that man look like?
It starts with childhood. We have to teach children as well as girls, because we're also taught, because of toxic masculinity, what a man should be as well.
I think that we just need to hold men accountable. In order to kind of make progress, we need help from people that will listen. Because let's be real, when we express our concerns, a lot of men refuse to listen, but they would be more likely to listen to another man.
Do you also feel like you have an ethical obligation to challenge other women or other feminists when, for example, they deny that men face discrimination?
When it comes to things like, oh, men can't be abused. I've had this conversation with another woman, and it's the idea that just because a man may be physically stronger than us, does that mean they cannot be abused? And because of that, again, fairness, women need to be held accountable as well.
All right, Bea, Boo, Bea, whatever the fuck your name is. I see what you're saying. I doubt that you actually do that, but I see what you're saying. And Mimi, you need to really shut the fuck up, because you're giving men too much power. Like, just because I go to my friend and say, hey, don't be misogynistic, he's not going to stop because I'm a man. He really isn't. It's all about who they respect. Now, if they may be taught by their mother not to do that, maybe we'll go on a little bit better, you know? Or, you know, a father or whatever the case may be. It's all about respect and how much respect you have for that person. So to put all this weight on men, or other men be like, oh, if you have to, you should, you're just completely wrong about that. Second, you are complaining and bitching and all this other shit about like, oh, they will only listen to men. As I stated earlier, if men actually did that, and men actually like stopped their friends from talking and having a good time, one, nobody would want to talk to him. Everybody would kind of fluke him unless they have same men around that mindset. And two, it's just like, you know, as I said, avoidance. They would try to avoid you like the motherfucking plague, right? Or the good old coof. I just don't understand Mimi. Like, I just think that she has just been salty, and she's been getting destroyed by the college kid with an accent. So I think her points are just trash, honestly. But, you know, it is, yeah.
All right, we'll leave it at that. That's a wrap, guys.
I'm sweaty.
Okay.
You are very articulate.
Oh, thank you.
And so are you.
Yes,
Thank
so
you.
are you.
Better stories.
Thanks for your time.
Okay.
And that's about it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for staying around and watching. Again, you should really go check out the channel, Jubilee, and check out their playlist. Middle Ground, there's a bunch of good videos that you probably like there. I had to cut around probably like midpoint of this, because I didn't want this video to be huge. But I do thank you, and have a great one, guys. Peace.